decide what solutions they wanted to use. And at the end of that 5 years, about 40 to 50% of all the schools in Singapore were using learning management system and e-learning in some ways. Then we had the second IT master plan, which wasn't as well funded as the first master plan, because the first master plan, we already bought all the hardware we need to buy. It was more about upgrading. So the budget was about probably 1/4 to 1/5 of the original 2 billion budget. Some significant things about this master plan too is that they decided to have flexible infrastructure, because they found that most schools were not using the infrastructure that the ministry provided, not using the computers that the schools that they were given with, because they felt that this was not what they wanted. So instead, they let the schools decide what they want. Each school can decide what they wish to buy. And instead of providing standard content for everybody, they encourage the school to look at how they can integrate technology with curriculum design at the planning stage. Right? Before you design content, you must plan what do you want to do with the technology. They looked at resources that are more customizable and reusable. We look at smaller learning objects rather than big content packages. We have small learning objects that can be recombined and reused. And also another significant thing was that instead of building standard content, we look at differentiated content, where maybe a better ability students can go for more advanced content, and the slower students can go for more standard content, and so on. At the end of that, there were several important programs during the master plan too. One was that money was given to the school. We call it the devolution of ICT fund, meaning that the head of departments in the schools, which are typically a teacher promoted to become the head of the department, now has the responsibility to decide several hundreds of thousands of dollars where they should spend it, what infrastructure to invest in, what equipment to buy, what software to buy. But the ministry also provided education technology officers who will serve as advisors to schools. One ETO will service about 2 clusters of schools. One cluster of schools is about 10 to 14 schools, so you have one officer, supposedly an expert, formerly managing IT in their own schools, now being promoted to handle about 25 to 30 schools in advising them how to use IT. And then we created many standards programs. We have the baseline ICT standards, where schools were used to do self-evaluation to check themselves off against what is a desired outcome. And the ministry will send officers in to audit them to make sure where they are and to benchmark them against what they think that the school should be. And for the schools that are able to prove that they can do better, the government created new schemes such as the LEAD ICT schools, which was eventually awarded to about 68 schools. These schools will then propose ideas. The ministry looks at it, they think it's interesting, innovative ideas. They'll give them additional money to go and try this program over and above all the standard money that they're given. And then we have Microsoft coming in with the Backpack.net program. And some of you may have heard of the Singapore Future Schools program. It was started somewhere during the MP2 period, where they wanted 15 schools to showcase how IT can be used in a futuristic manner. Today there are 6 future schools in Singapore. The government have pumped in quite a bit of money into these 6 demo schools. The government also started something called the emergency school closure, where every school in Singapore must at least simulate a school closure at least several times in a year. Like my own child, sometimes they don't go to the school. On the school day, they have to do their learning from home. So every school have to do that. The industry itself, after all the dot-com boom, with 30 to 40 companies started in the year 2000, slowly, over time, some of them found that they couldn't survive, so there was merger, acquisition, closures of company, and there were active MOE and IDA partnership to stimulate creative ideas from the schools to support the development of e-learning. And there were more mature e-learning systems. We started to adopt many of the standards, such as the SCORM standards. It became something that's compulsory for all the schools to use. And schools also have a lot of interesting niche innovative ideas, which then they provided the companies to build. So, as a result of Master Plan 2, 100% of all the schools in Singapore at the end of year 2008 were using e-learning. The teachers were comfortable with different ways to make their own content, and there was also very active research by the schools and NIE. And most of the content is actually created in Singapore. They are not created by the Ministry of Education anymore. They are created by the industry. Then we had our third master plan, which started 2 years ago and is running till year 2014. The key for this new master plan is that they want to strengthen the integration of ICT into curriculum and pedagogy, more planning of how it can be used effectively. They wanted also another track where teachers can share professional development in this area about how they use ICT effectively. So they encourage the National Institute of Education, which is a teachers training college in Singapore, to form some active research groups on this, sharing of best practices, and also continuous enhancing of the ICT provisions to schools. Now, some very significant Master Plan 3 projects have been implemented. We started with some one-to-one computing schools in Singapore at the end of the Master Plan 2, and they wanted to encourage more one-to-one computing as well as wireless computing in schools. Some of the programs that were started in the Master Plan 2, such as Future School, Lead ICT, continues on. Singapore is going on to a gigabit national bandwidth. That should be available in the next few years across the whole Singapore. So we should see more active use of broadband content, more active research. But one very significant industry development is that, you see, in the first master plan, the government wanted to have one learning management system for the whole country. They found that it didn't work. In the second master plan, they let the schools decide what they want to do. While the idea sounds good and it spurs some creative development, it also resulted in a lot of problems. What were the problems? Some companies closed down because they couldn't survive. Some companies overpromised the schools, they couldn't deliver. And when the schools really need to use it, it couldn't happen. So the schools were very frustrated as well. So in the third master plan, what they did was they pre-selected 3 companies after a tender process so that these companies would be able to meet the minimum standards, and the schools will be allowed to use the budget given to them to choose from one of these 3 players. So at least it provides a minimum standard but gives the school the freedom to decide which player suits them better. So some of the key factors shaping the evolution of e-learning use in Singapore, there's been all this debate, centralized versus autonomy by schools. So thankfully for all the autonomy that was given, smaller companies like mine, when we started out in year 2000, could thrive in the environment, could come up with a lot of innovative ideas. So while autonomy is good, I also shared that there were also problems because imagine there were 30 to 50 companies and most of them are not around today. So those schools that went with them found very frustrating that they had to change their e-learning plans because the company closed down. So another thing that shaped the evolution was that there was very active experimentation in the use of ICT, started off by all the government grants, and the companies latched on the grants and created interesting ideas, and some of this grew on to become very successful. And there was something very interesting that happened in Singapore that really drove home the point that e-learning is a necessity, not a luxury. Some of you will remember that in year 2003, there was SARS that hit certain parts of the world, Singapore included. So we had to close our schools for 2 weeks in Singapore in 2003. At that time, only about 40% of the schools were using e-learning. So you imagine what happened to the rest of the 60% of the schools. They could not do anything. The students go home, there was no way they had learning. And then 2 years ago, there was a H1N1 where we almost closed our schools as well. So it drove home the point that it was important because situations like this, you need to have e-learning. And of course, if there are no emergency situation like this, schools can also use it to supplement the way they do teaching and learning in a creative way. So gradually also the teachers became more and more confident administrators and users of ICT. Although this is not an easy journey, it's a 14 years journey. I've seen it happen from the time that teachers do not know how to use the mouse, they lift it up and move it in the air and wonder why the mouse doesn't work, you know. Yeah, so, but today teachers are more comfortable with the process of content usage, even product development, sharing ideas with us, how to build content. And the school's head of IT, who are teachers, have started to learn how to manage IT resources, how to plan budgets, how to use it effectively. They have also learned how to deal with technology changes and so on. So, but it's a long journey, but we have come to a stage where a number of the schools are quite good at it and they are sharing the ideas with other schools. So as I mentioned at the start of my talk, there are three main players: the government, the schools, the industry, and of course the technology at the back influencing many of the developments along the way. That while you are these three players with different needs, we also need to bear in mind that technology is never the same. So you cannot plan too far ahead. It's very hard to say, I want to plan 10 years, 15 years. You can maybe plan 3 years, 5 years, because after that, technology changed so much, nobody knows what's going to happen. So when you execute the plan, we need to execute it fast as well. So I know my time is up, so I will just very quickly bring you through what e-learning means in Singapore. In fact, these are just selected examples because e-learning means so many things. There is no one definition of e-learning. It's not a matter of learning management system and that's it. We have, of course, simulations and animated objects where we can do science experiments. We have animated content that takes you through step by step, explaining concepts to you. In Singapore, one of the very important things that has been emphasized to all the teachers is that do not rely only on content that's created by ministry or by the vendors. Teachers must build their own content. As a result, when we were servicing the schools, due to all these pressures, we built a lot of e-learning tools that allow the teachers to use their own PowerPoint, Word document, and different ideas and different content they have, be it pictures, videos, and so on, to be able to merge it into a lesson using the learning object concept. And to make things easier for the teachers, we have lesson bank with all the multimedia content that we provide and what we can find from the internet. We classified it properly so that the teachers can go there and search according to the level, according to the topics that they want. The ministry also provided video resources that were originally created during the first master plan, and these were then distributed to the schools in the form of a CD-ROM. But many e-learning companies started to take this and put it up onto the e-learning platform so that the teachers can use it. And then they put it in the streaming format to make sure that it is easily accessible. So these are just some results, examples of made by teachers content. So blogs are also commonly used by teachers and students as part of lessons. And then we have things like a journalism where students sometimes go outdoor for learning, they come back, they report it through a portal. So this is also e-learning in Singapore. So example of an article written by students after they have gone out on a trip to do some reporting. So it's part of that language learning. And then we have this particular one where students will record themselves in front of a video reading, and then the other friends can actually go in and comment about their reading, and they can even make comments at a particular point in the video where the person maybe said something wrongly. You can put a bookmark there and jump to that part and comment on it. So we have game builders tools to allow the teachers to just fill in the questions and the answers and generate a game that you can easily put as a learning object in your learning in your course package. So this allows teachers to be able to build content with just ideas they have. Maybe I want, instead of a quiz question, I want it in a hangman game format, in a drag and drop game format. So the teachers just have to specify the format, put in the questions